Based out of Washington, D.C., we are the leading voice on educator preparation, and we represent more than 800 post-secondary institutions and partners with advocacy and programming dedicated to high-quality, evidence-based preparation that assures educators are ready to teach all learners. I've been with AACT since 2006, and I've had the privilege of knowing and working with Dean Metcalf for the majority of my 12 years. And I am extremely proud to say our national office staff and all of our members look forward to inducting him as the chair of our board of directors in 2019. So let's give him a round of applause. Additionally, I would like to extend many thanks from AACTE to the team here at UNLV who has partnered with us for our last 3 annual meetings, and we look forward to having them as a partner with us again during our upcoming 2019 annual meeting in February. So thank you, UNLV. We really appreciate your support. I'm excited to be here today on behalf of AACT to witness this summit, bringing together varied stakeholders to inform and lead the next best practices in education. Our AACT team in DC is excited to see what lies ahead for Nevada, what developments can and will continue to inform education and educator preparation, and how we in the DC office may partner with you moving forward from the national level. It's in this vein that I'm proud to introduce our next panel this afternoon, discussing policy issues in Nevada education. The UNLV College of Education, for the 3rd legislative year in a row, will embark upon the COE Policy Paper Series, designed to provide a deep dive into key education issues facing the Nevada legislature in the upcoming legislative session. In addition to this year's policy series, this panel will also include representation from co-authors of the Nevada Teacher Workforce Report's 2nd edition, providing a snapshot of the workforce and workforce implications of teacher educators throughout the state of Nevada. The Teacher Workforce Report is an outgrowth of the Nevada Commission on the Teacher Pipeline, or Consortium, on the Teacher Pipeline, a group of nearly 150 statewide leaders with a distinct mission to improve the quality, quantity, retention, and effectiveness of teachers in Nevada. It's my pleasure to introduce the following panelists. Dr. Matt Borek, Director of Educator Preparation, Recruitment, and Field Placement for the UNLV College of Education. Dr. Danica G. Hayes, Executive Associate Dean and Professor at the UNLV College of Education. Dr. Cori Moore, Assistant Professor, UNLV College of Education. Ms. Lois Paretti, Field Experience Coordinator, UNLV College of Education. Dr. Jenna Weglarz-Ward, Assistant Professor, UNLV College of Education. Dr. Sam Song, Associate Professor, UNLV College of Education. And our moderator for this panel, Mr. Todd Mason, Director of Government Affairs, Wynn Resorts Limited.
There we are. I'm sorry. Can everybody hear me? Okay. All right. Good afternoon. Thank you. Such a wonderful introduction. Thank you all for being here. It is always a pleasure for, not only on behalf of my company, for us to support this event here in Nevada, because I'm joking. I'm not. It's okay. Because Nevada is Nevada, and is important to all of us in Nevada, especially when we talk about Nevada education in Nevada. So I will, I'm sorry, okay, I'm sorry. Moving on, you have heard all of our panelists. We could be up here for many hours. I do want to encourage you, please send in those questions. You can do so over Twitter. Forgive me if any of you have heard me say this, but I graduated from SEC and Pac-12 schools, so I'm not saying that's terrible, but people can probably come up with better questions than me. So what I wanted to start off with, you heard about teacher workforce report, and my first question really was, in general, and by all means, please everyone feel free just to jump in on this, but let me just get to the question, excuse me. Please, anyone, could we, before we get to teacher workforce, excuse me, if we could start with you, Doctor, just a brief overview of the papers you worked on, anything else you'd like to add? We have roughly an hour here, so I'll try to move through questions as quickly as I can, but please.
Hi, so the paper that I worked on, I was co-author on the teacher workforce report. I'll leave that to you to describe. The other paper was an overview of teacher leadership approaches throughout the country, the various definitions that are used to launch this work, and the implementation challenges associated with each, along with some recommendations for future work.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Let's try this again. There we go. Good afternoon. I co-authored the teacher workforce report, and it was an honor on behalf of the consortium to work on that project. And just very briefly, this is the second edition of the report, and it is quite expanded. But just to give you a general sense of the topics it covers, we talk a lot about the state and national context in terms of the teacher pipeline, but we drill down into data around teacher vacancies across the state and counties. We look at the completer data, the program enrollment data across the state of Nevada, and how many teachers we're generating. In addition, we look at the relationship between the production and the demand of teachers, offer some recommendations based on those data, and look at how legislatively we might move forward to create a healthier teacher workforce.
Hello. I can't tell if you can hear. I know what people are talking about. Hello?
Switch has to be up.
There you go.
There. I can work a microphone. So I worked on the paper with several co-authors looking at the state of autism and early childhood education across the state of Nevada. We looked at, of course, the huge provider shortage. And when we're looking at our young children with autism, we're looking at providers in the public sector, which are our schools and our early intervention providers, as well as the private sector, which would be our clinical providers, such as BCBAs and those working in applied behavior analysis. I can't get away without talking with autism, just to keep in mind that it is a social communication disorder with a lot of behaviors that come along with not being able to express your wants and needs. It's a disorder that can be somewhat hard to notice in the public because our kiddos don't have any physical differences. They look the same as everybody else. And so there can be a lot of judgment and some hard challenges for families when working with our kiddos. And I have to keep that in people's minds when we're talking about kids with autism. It's also important to note that the return on investment for early intervention is incredible. The cost of autism treatment over the course of a lifetime can be $1.4 to $2.4 million per child. And if we intervene early, we can reduce that by as much as 2/3. So the money we invest now in our young kiddos will make them able to have successful, productive lives in the workforce. And so that's really what we're focusing on, is how to increase that capacity. Because right now, for instance, in Clark County School District, there are only 37% of the teachers that have a standard teaching license in all of the self-contained autism classrooms. So just keeping in mind when we're looking at workforce development and we're looking at our young children, we really want to intervene early so we can have those really great positive outcomes, because they can have a wonderful, fantastic life as they're destined and should have.
Good afternoon. Is that on? Okay. I worked with a couple of my colleagues on retaining Nevada's teachers, issues and solutions, and you really do need to applaud me for saying that because it took me a very long time to remember that. Those of you who can still hear my accent, you will forgive me, but I do know how to say Nevada. We worked on some of the challenges that the Department of Education faces as far as retaining our teachers. We all know that there is a shortage of teachers. There is an even more dire shortage of people who stay in the profession due to attrition, which is people leaving, teachers just leaving the profession completely, and also due to turnover, which is when teachers move schools. Either message is not good for children. We want to make sure that we have highly qualified, effective educators for all of our children. As Dr. Jarrah was saying this morning, every child deserves to have a teacher who is highly qualified. It makes a difference. It makes a difference for businesses as well. If we make sure that we retain our teachers, then we have a better educational system for all students. They'll be better prepared for the workforce. And that's important. It's important for industry when people come here and want to move here. And so we feel that if we retain teachers, we will not only save money, we will improve practice and increase student achievement, which is really what is key to what we're doing. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My colleagues and I actually have two papers that we're working on for the policy legislative session this year, and they echo the same things that we're talking about here, but specifically for young children. So we have one paper that talks about really looking at access to high quality early childhood experiences for all children, children with and without disabilities and their families. And then the other paper really looks at early identification of children with disabilities and delays. And those papers really go together to really look at how can we really support children and families that first 5 years of life. We spend a significant amount of time in all of our papers in early childhood. We spend time really talking about the early childhood context because it's very different than the K-12 context where we're in lots of different sectors. Families and children interact with childcare programs, libraries, doctor's offices, grocery stores, the fitness centers with the child cares in there, as well as preschool programs, school-based programs, private programs, charter programs, early intervention, home visiting. It goes on and on and on. It's a very complex space to work in, and so when we're talking about looking at a quality workforce, we have to look across all those sectors and make sure that we're providing support to all of those professionals that interact with families and children so that when families are in need or questioning whether their children are developing properly or looking for a really high quality experience for their family in those early years, we have professionals that are really knowledgeable about what is happening in the communities, what services are available, and that professionals feel confident and qualified to provide those services. It's really important. So with that as well, in early childhood, we talk about that we always have a two-generation approach, and sometimes it's a multi-generation approach where we have grandparents caring for children, and also obviously parents caring for children. And in early childhood, we're not just caring for the child, but we're also supporting parents. We're supporting parents in developing their confidence, their competence of child development, strategies to use with their children, understanding when to go and where to go for help when they need it, and making sure that they're developing the skills so as their child grows up, they feel like they can meet their child's needs. It's very important. So our providers are not just working with children, we're also supporting families. And so when we do that and we provide these high quality experiences to all our children and families, we're going to be increasing academic outcomes across the lifetime. And that goes up into employment. So we support children very young. We identify children with disabilities younger, so we get them high quality supports. We reduce their costs, reduce their need for intensive services. They're able to grow up, go into the workforce, and help support the economy. We're supporting parents being able to leave their children with high quality providers in order to go to work. Many of us here today are here because our children are in high quality programs. So we're able to go to work, seek out additional education if they want to get to different degrees, different jobs, and also, most importantly, I think, gain a sense of rest and relaxation from time to time. If anyone's raised a young child, it's very challenging. So having a space for them to go where we can trust the people that they're with, we know they're getting experiences that are helping children develop and learn, we as parents can take a breath and get that really kind of social emotional pieces as well that are really important. And we obviously, as everyone said too, all of these things reduce the costs for specialized care either through medicine, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech and language pathology, as well as special education costs and remedial costs. And long-term things, we're also seeing children with high quality care and education early in their life are doing things that are really great. They're doing well in school, and they're staying out of trouble. They're staying out of our legal system, which is very, very important, our long-term cost for our community as well. So we also share very exciting things, and we'll talk about that, I know, through the questions, but Nevada's doing some really amazing things in early childhood right now that we'll be able to share later.
Hello. I'm working on a policy paper on school safety, and I'm also a co-author. One of my co-authors is here, Heather Thompson, doctoral student, developing expert on restorative justice. My other co-author is Dr. Patrice Leverett, assistant professor of school psychology. With school safety, the paper is really looking at what research is supporting in terms of what to do about school safety, and really we're in a climate of the country where a lot of these violent events outside of school and also at school have really created this urgency for leaders to solve the problem very quickly, right? And so that's very understandable, and as a result, there can be a number of quick, easy solutions that people may say that are just not empirically supported, that are embellishments of partial truths. And so in this paper, we're really looking at what are empirically supported strategies so that leaders and lawmakers can make decisions based on science.
Thank you. Appreciate you going through those so quickly. I know there's a lot more context, and we're going to do our best to get to as much of it as we can. If I could start just with the teacher workforce report, and again, a question for any of the authors or any of you on the panel. Dr. Hayes, you mentioned the decline in completion of traditional, or what we would think of as traditional programs, like a 4-year degree for aspiring teachers. This is a question in a vein I'll ask quite a bit, but are there any examples that you or others have found, perhaps outside of Nevada, where through policy, curriculum, what have you, that a state has been able to increase completions? Is there any such example, or is this something that we see commonly?
Well, I think the decline in traditional enrollments and completers is a national trend, for sure. I think Nevada has been such a front runner in terms of being innovative about the types of more non-traditional programs that we do offer. We did include in the report some data that show that our ARL program completions are increasing rapidly along with our enrollments. And I think part of that is just the reality of the way that the teacher workforce is shaping, and that's a great thing. We're expanding what teacher education or the profession is conceptually to folks that may have never thought of being a teacher or what the function of teaching is. So we're attracting individuals that have bachelors in different areas, such as STEM, which is a highly needed area. We're also attracting students as sophomores in high schools in new pipeline programs that we're doing in Nevada, and getting folks acclimated not only to the idea of going to college, but to paying it forward and paying it back to the teachers that got them there. So,
excellent, thank you. So along those lines, with alternative route to licensure. Is that also nationally, we see a trend of that growing?
We definitely do, but I would say Nevada is one of the state leaders in terms of that. I think there was resistance to it for a long time because it wasn't seen as high quality, et cetera, but with programs such as Teach for America and others that are offered, we are seeing positive results. We're able to get teachers in the classrooms. We're getting the right teachers with the right intentions that are wanting to stay there long term. And as Lois spoke about, the importance of reducing teacher turnover as well as the general attrition is important. And I think we're getting a more non-traditional audience in those programs, people that are maybe going back for a second career, or they're kind of rethinking what they want to do, and they're serious about it.
I think also I didn't say Nevada. I think also what we are doing in our program at UNLV has been really helpful because we get folks into the field and then we support them while they're in the field experience. And that makes quite a difference as far as their expectations. We heard a little earlier, too, about how research doesn't connect to the actual practice and the authenticity. And I think our program is quite authentic, and we really have people experience what it's like to really be a teacher in a classroom from the very beginning of their program. And so they understand that, they perform better in the field, they're better prepared, and then they're going to stay as teachers.
And I think in early childhood, we're seeing one strategy that we're using to help recruit and retain professionals is really showing value for teachers and across the different sectors and topics where it's a really important job. And so one, there's a public perspective of these are really important things and we should value them. And then the other piece is an economic perspective of we need to make sure we are economically supporting professionals so they can stay in the field. In early childhood in particular, many professionals struggle to financially meet the needs of their families while working in early childhood. So we see them, go to older grades where they get paid a little bit more. And so we're really trying to find, and this is a national initiative as well as in Nevada, the NACE, our national organization, is really looking at the power to the profession and what can we do to really, on different sectors, really attract people and keep them here and make them feel proud to be in the field of education.
Thank you. So real quickly, I would be remiss if I didn't mention certainly something that I've seen in the states that I work, which is the even larger gap in most rural areas between teachers that are needed and teachers who are joining the profession. That is the case in Nevada. Have you found something that is perhaps unique about Nevada compared to other states? Or is there a common theme when we talk about attracting and retaining teachers in rural areas?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think there's definitely a unique context in terms of Nevada and the, access to education, access to information about the teaching profession. Listening to our speaker this morning about rural schools are overlooked. I mean, some of the data that we found is in some of our more rural counties, as much as 20 to 30% of their workforce is currently vacant. And that's quite extensive. And they're also experiencing the higher end of class sizes. So I think some of those pieces in terms of feeling the effects more of losing teachers and facing the challenge also because of the economy, folks are moving out of suburban or urban areas because it just costs more to live, that we're seeing population increases, but we're not seeing the support in the school, nor are we reaching out to those communities to try to build that workforce as much as we can. We saw that both in this edition as well as the previous edition, that we really are suffering in our rural counties in terms of teacher workforce.
So another thing I've talked with colleagues who are in other rural areas, and I don't know if Lois has any thoughts about this as well, is thinking about making sure that our students, even if they come to do their program in an urban area, are we giving them experiences in teaching in rural areas? And so I've worked with some colleagues that are thinking about that and how can we place them to do student teaching, for example, out in a rural area and supervise them as well. So lots of things happening in early intervention, in particular using technology, using virtual supervision, using Skype and all these new technologies we have to be able to connect with students who want to or are from rural areas, go back to those rural areas and provide and get their student teaching there and then stay in the communities as well. So I think, I do agree, it's a national phenomenon as well as here, but I think there's some very innovative ways that we can do that if we think a little bit outside the box.
And I will say that we do offer our candidates that opportunity if they want it. I get requests all the time for jobs as well, and we will allow our candidates. A lot of times, though, we meet resistance from the candidates themselves who prefer an urban setting.
If we look at the field of autism, where a lot of children will receive services in their home, there can be no providers whatsoever, as everyone else is experiencing. Telehealth has really jumped in to kind of help provide some solutions to this problem. It still puts a lot of burden on families, but it's a model that we could follow in the education field as well to help us use technology as a great tool.
And just quickly, I think just to add to that, I think we are very cognizant of looking at ways to expose our current students to opportunities in rural settings. And I think that we're moving more towards recruiting directly from rural areas. I mean, we don't have a lot of funding to recruit, no matter who you are, and so we tend to want to go to places that are highly populated where we can have a bigger draw. But in terms of retention and getting folks that understand not just the academic needs, but some of the other issues that we talked about earlier, substance abuse and mental health issues, we really do need to target those rural areas where maybe the economy isn't as great in those states, and this would be particularly attractive to them to be here.
So if I could stick with just an overall question, really to anyone who would like to respond. What, in your opinion, are institutions of higher ed, whether that's within this state or nationwide, doing to address a lack of diversity in the teacher pipeline, which I know is something that the teacher workforce report and many others speaks to?
What are they doing? I don't know.
That's a hard question.
Yeah, it is, because it's more of a recruitment.
It wasn't one of mine,
Wasn't
actually,
one
if
of
I
yours?
could just put
Well,
that to
I
the
mean,
audience.
so
sorry.
one thing, at least, conversations that we're having, particularly in the Division for Early Childhood through the Council of Exceptional Children, is not only focusing on recruitment of students to come to our undergraduate and graduate programs, but also recruiting faculty to go into our doctoral programs so they will become faculty. So making sure that we're diversifying our faculty as well. So when students come to a program, they see themselves in all levels of the program, not just at the students. So I think we haven't solved the problem, but it's definitely a conversation that we're having to really think about that longevity so that we're seeing professionals at all levels doing that.
Yeah, I would just add, that was some of the data that we found that was encouraging. When we look at our teacher enrollments and our completers in the state over the last 6 years, we do see quite an uptick in Latino teacher candidates. We see that our completers are increasingly becoming less white, and we're beginning to diversify the workforce. And I know our institution, I know other institutions have been very intentional what Jenna's speaking about in terms of recruiting not just doctoral students, but master's students, because it's important for our kids to have those models in the system. And we're beginning to mirror the district, Clark County School District, but we're not there yet. But we are making some efforts.
And we also have the program where we're partnering with certain secondary schools, and we have the TEACH program where high school students are able to take college courses, and we welcome them here into our program to become teachers.
Yeah, I'm a school psychologist, so as I didn't really answer, but in terms of the general types of strategies that people are talking about, just to add in, I know that at least in psychology recruitment and school psychology recruitment, in terms of diverse faculty, what I would add in is that not only do you want faculty who are diverse, but you want a diverse curriculum, a curriculum that is sensitive to cultural issues, to racism and all the other isms out there, so that diverse students would naturally be a little bit more interested. And it's a very important, critical issue because you see, although the Nevada teacher force is diversifying, still as a country, it's I think 85% white female teachers, and so it's really problematic for a lot of reasons. And the part that I would want to bring in would be discipline practices and disproportionality in exclusionary discipline, and so yeah.
And very quickly, this is more anecdote than trend, but part of the work is the actual attention to it, the actual deliberate recruitment of diverse candidates to colleges of education. That's something that, as part of our recruitment plan that we developed, stayed at the center of what we're doing. A new initiative, the Nevada Institute on Teaching and Educator Preparation, is bringing in cohorts of fellows in future years, and that's one of our central criteria, is to reflect the diversity of the campus. When we're the most diverse campus in the country, we come from a different place in terms of who we're recruiting here and the experience that they have here. So part of our recruitment efforts was specifically making sure that the students we're targeting are able to enter this environment and thrive here.
So if I could stay on the topic of recruitment, Dr. Borek, one of the things that your paper obviously addresses is the support that is necessary after recruitment takes place. I'm curious, how does the concept of teacher leadership fit into that? And what kinds of supports are we really talking about?
So I think the first place I come from on this is that the notion of support, just like teacher leadership, can be defined very differently depending on where you are. Normally we tend to associate support with professional development, and specifically for professional development for those who might be struggling. Support exists in many ways, and teacher leadership can in itself be a support for those teachers who may need assistance, but the existence of a meaningful career ladder that allows effective teachers to aspire toward additional responsibilities while also maintaining their classroom responsibilities, on its own, that's something that props up the overall system. It helps in recruitment terms because now you have a career ladder that is more robust. It provides more options throughout your career than was typically the case. You could carve out roles that allow someone who enjoys being in the classroom to stay in the classroom, but to deploy their expertise in other ways in addition to that.
So, Ms. Paretti, along the lines of retention, those supports, it seems to me, are critical with retention as well. What are other types of supports or policies, programs that you have found to be very effective in retaining teachers once they are in the profession?
Okay, well, first we have to get them there, and I think we need a very well-prescribed plan of induction and mentoring. New teachers need to be coached, okay? They come into the classroom with various degrees of preparation, and they really need help and support. I always tell my beginning practicum students, when I talk to them about licensure and that they will be a licensed certified teacher when they graduate, I say, but do you remember when you were 16, 17, those of you in the audience, do you remember when you got your driver's license? State gave you a driver's license. Doesn't anybody in here drive? State gave you a driver's license, right? Did you know how to drive? Kind of, sort of. I hope you've gotten better. Well, it's very similar with teaching. Teachers need support. We give them the basis and the foundation, but it is a profession that definitely needs experience. And in order to become experienced and remain in the profession, you really need that support. At the building level, administrators need to understand that. Administrators are very overworked and overwhelmed. I understand that. I am a former principal of an elementary school myself. But it is really important to support your teachers. and administrators need to understand that. They need to help their new teachers. Also, professional development needs to be meaningful. It can't be, all right, sit here all day and I'm going to tell you how to do this. Teachers need to be engaged and involved and really work at it and not be thrown programs and new ideas all the time before they have a chance to digest and use them and then get something new. They need to work with it. They need the time to work through it and figure out what works best for them and their students. I really think we need to respect teachers. You know, most teachers don't go into this profession for the pay, but it is problematic. You know, teachers feel they have a very difficult job. They work very long hours, despite what the public thinks. Those of you in this room understand that. A lot of people don't. They'll tell you that teachers go into it for the vacations, the summer's off. You know, they leave at 3 o'clock. Even bankers don't do that anymore, okay? So they need to be respected. And because of the low pay, I think there's a lower level of respect for teachers, and we certainly need to change that. When teachers feel better about themselves and what they're doing and get that encouragement and support at all levels, from the community, from the schools, from their colleagues, then they will remain.
When we look at our teachers of students with autism, it can be really challenging to get that appropriate mentoring. You might be the only teacher at the school who is knowledgeable about working with students with autism. And if you're there on an alternative route to license, or you're on an option where you have a teaching license in elementary education but not autism, it can be really challenging. So there has to be a serious look at creative solutions. Also looking at leveraging community resources and leveraging things that are in existence. We have students often have lots of, we'll call it wraparound services, where they're getting additional therapies outside of school. And if we can break down some of those policy barriers, where we can get people working together on the same page, where they're allowed to be in the schools, and there's reasons why schools don't do that, for safety and for other reasons. But if we can really examine that, we can help do a better job for our teachers. But it's really hard, and I think that's why we see such a large turnover for our teachers in special education, especially for those of working with students who have more intensive needs.
And I think to pair with that too, this piece of support too is if you're a special educator, you're working with a general educator as well. And I think there's pieces where we can support each other a little bit better, so that we reduce the stress load of both professionals. So a special educator, there are times where the general educator will kind of put all the weight of the services for that child on the special educator, where those services, that should be shared across them, so they're working more collaboratively. And I think this collaborative approach is something where we could provide more support to professionals so that they feel more supported. They don't feel as much fatigue or burnout that makes them want to leave our profession, but stay there and say, I know it's really important to be here, and I know that I have people that will support me and support the children that I'm working with and the families that I'm working with is really important. And I think what Lois said too about professional development, the research is very clear that those one shot, sit in a room for 3 hours, particularly after you've been teaching all day, are not the most effective ways to learn and change practice, but coaching and mentoring are very effective to do that. And so there are some things, particularly in early childhood, we are doing some coaching and mentoring models that have been working very well. They're hard to do. They're hard to do, but they're worth the work. So it'd be good to see if what are some feasible ways to really provide mentoring at different levels. And it's not just brand new teachers that need mentoring as well. There's always a time where you may need some mentoring or some coaching during your career, even if you've been in there for 20 years. Things change. You might need a little something to help you with. So I think it's good to look at that, different approaches, and really looking at how we're addressing adult learners to support their skills to support our young learners.
Excellent, thank you. Let me get to one question that came in on Twitter. It's the first time I've ever said that. Can the panel comment on the untapped resource of retirees who could be used as contractors? I'm not sure if that is possible or not, but regardless, who could be used to address the teacher pipeline issues?
I think that is done in certain cases, but there are also reasons why people retire. So, the want has to be there and the passion still has to be there. And that's really important too.
I would say just in teacher leadership terms that they could be untapped resource is the best way to look at it. It's a possibility. I don't know if we could lean on that as a taken for granted and begin building around that, but it does seem like a useful starting point and something that we could start building out these larger systems if we had people with time to devote to it, and most importantly the interest to actually do the work.
Excellent, thank you. If I could, Dr. Moore, we talked about and we have talked about for many years the shortage of teachers with special certifications, period. Specifically in the vein of special education, those students who are on the autism spectrum, what are the negative effects of not having those professionals in place? Is it as simple as we are leaving students behind? Or are there more impacts?
It's a really great question. There, to me, are some obvious implications of that, but there's a way that it was Michael Gerson stated, and it was the soft bigotry of low expectations. Thinking about how if we don't hold those high expectations, we don't know better, our students are going to be left behind. And that's just a societal stance on if we believe students can do more and our kiddos can do more. There's also some serious implications legally that schools will run into. If you're not trained, you don't know the special education laws. If you don't know the laws, you're going to break the laws. If you break the laws, it's going to do harm to students, first of all. And secondly, it's going to cost schools money because you're going to be in court. So that's a financial and a human risk. There are also issues of long-term consequences for students. If we don't set them out right, starting at the beginning, what makes them, when they're already struggling to learn, want to continue to go to school day after day after day after day? And then we're going to see an increase in behavior, an increase in issues. And if you're a teacher working with students who are struggling, and you're continuing to working with the same behaviors over and over again, it can be a self-perpetuating cycle. We need more research on the evaluation tools. We'll rely on self-efficacy measures a lot for teachers, and teachers' self-efficacy and their ability to feel good about what they're doing. What we've found with this research is it's a good tool to measure beginning teachers' proficiency in academics. It's not a good tool when we're looking at classroom management and behavior. So when we're looking at our kiddos in special education, again, who often have behaviors due to an inability to communicate whatever it is they're feeling, we're not going to have really good tools. So it can go on, but we just have to do a better job of making teachers see how fun, because, excuse me, there's nothing more fun than working with my population of kiddos. I'm sorry, you can't show me anything better. It's the best job in the world.
I would also just add in that in terms of the bullying literature, autism spectrum is a diverse group, but some groups, some of these children along the spectrum are more likely to be bullied by peers, and so this is where then some of the social communication interventions early on would be really helpful, and where it really would be remiss not to do that. So.
Excellent. A question for you, Dr. Ward, if I may editorialize a bit. I guess that's editorializing. In my personal experience, I have found very few public policy levers that such a small investment pays off in the long run than early childhood, let me call it education as a catch-all. It's more than that, obviously. You mentioned earlier some things that Nevada is doing very well. What is the state doing very well?
Oh, great. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll preface this by I've been here, it's my third year here. And so in the time that I've been here, some things that are really exciting that happen is, I mentioned before that early childhood is a really vast space with lots of different programs and professionals and we're in Department of Health and Human Services and Department of Education and Health, and there's all over this place. So one thing that's really been happening in the past couple of years is bringing everyone together, looking at what are we all doing that's the same, what it's doing that's different, how can we more collaborate together? And so the Early Childhood Advocacy Council has been really pivotal in this piece of really looking at saying, okay, we have all these committees, all these councils, all these universities and colleges, all these professionals, the research that's going on. Let's bring everybody together. And literally, we've just brought people together in rooms and said, okay, what does everybody do? What are we all doing that is, we're all here to make positive changes for children and families. So we've been working together, and so there's been lots of things going on. Strategic plans have been made to move that forward, and then getting professionals to really connect with each other and network each other and leverage our strengths together. So researchers in higher education, what can we do to support some of the things that are going on at community levels and state levels, and how can the people working at the state help researchers work as well? So there's a lot of reciprocal relationships going on. And through that, there's also been the strengthening of our quality rating and improvement system, our QRIS system, the Silver Stars system, and our Nevada Registry, which provides professional development to child care providers. And then our Part C program, which is for our infants and toddlers, they've been getting technical assistance through some national technical assistance centers, which we're really excited about. And so we're pulling all those things together to work across those different silos that we used to have. And in many states, we have siloed programs, and then it's kind of a fractured system. So we've been really trying to pull everything together. It's been really exciting. And we're really excited about some things that are moving forward. In particular, we're really looking at supporting social and emotional outcomes for young children. And so starting in January, we'll have technical assistance from the Center for National Pyramid Model Innovations. And so they'll be coming in and really working with not just our Part C providers and infants and toddlers, but looking across the spectrum and how can we support social emotional outcomes, looking at provider support and family support. So I would say early childhood, it's a really exciting place to be right now in Nevada. And so if you're looking for something exciting to do, come to a meeting or come talk to us and see how we can really work together and work with different people and really look at the community and the state.
And do you mind if I jump in on another positive thing that's happening in our schools? For our kiddos that are 3, 4, and 5 years old, the state has done an amazing job across the state, particularly in Clark County, but across the state, of developing those inclusive programs in early childhood. And that's so critical to have all kiddos educated in the same place, so we have that great peer modeling and those great language, social, emotional outcomes. Those are really the basis for long-term success. So kudos to the state on reaching those hard goals.
I think, too, what's been nice about the relationships we have in higher education with the state is that we're all on the same page. So when we have ideas about things, they're open to listening to them. And when they have ideas, they come to us so that we can put them into our programs, so that we're aligned with the ideas that are happening at all the levels.
Excellent. Dr. Song, to address school safety, there are already a number of bills drafted for the 2019 session that will address school safety in different ways, I am certain. Probably most of us in this room are familiar with the concept of the school resource officer, which we see, well, really throughout the country. What are, though, in your research, what have you found are other promising models, or perhaps better models?
Right. So I wouldn't say better, but and in addition to. So I agree. There's a number of initiatives right now going on from different organizations in Nevada. One is obviously the Nevada statewide task force on school safety. And is anyone here from there? I know Dr. Doc Weller's here, who's worked on that. But yeah, they've just recently submitted or made public their final recommendation. So I think that work is very good. Just really quickly, I want to say something about the school resource officers. It is this large organization, the National Association of School Resource Officers, and just to say, I have some good relationship with them. I've presented at that conference before and worked with SROs. I think, though, one of the cautions, and not to say that we shouldn't use them, but one of the cautions is that they need to be trained and trained well. And there needs to be correct communication or clear communication between them and the administration regarding their role, right? So a lot of the emerging research, there's not a lot of research on this, but the emerging research and a lot of reports of administrators and people that I know are actually working with these groups in different states across the country. Sometimes they really lack a lot of training, especially in the area of working with disabilities, and especially in just kind of basic safety. So, for example, one county who's being sued, by the way, for having untrained school resource officers. The school resource officers have left weapons exposed in school bathrooms or accidentally discharged weapons. And so this whole county in Florida is being sued by parent group along with some other organizations because they feel that having school resource officers is going to increase potential death and trauma to their children. I don't know. I'm not saying that is true. I'm saying it seems plausible. And the research, there's just not a lot of really solid research in this area. So I think that that's one of the recommendations that I have is to strongly, very clearly train SROs, not in their full roles. So the NASRO, they say that school resource officers are supposed to be counselors and teachers in addition to law enforcement officers. The part of training that's being neglected is the areas of counseling and teaching. And so how do they work with kids, especially who are having some disruptive behaviors, some challenging behaviors? We just talked about autism spectrum disorders. We're talking about children who speak different languages who are already traumatized. And so I think this is an important issue for us to really address now. Let's train them well. Let's make sure that their training is solid in this area. So school resource officers, they kind of comprise this larger category of just security measures. So with school safety, because obviously we don't want violent events to occur, there's this reactionary policies and behaviors regarding let's make the school more of like a fortress, okay? So it's this hardening of schools phenomenon, and I'm not saying that's not helpful. It can be helpful, but the research is mixed. Some research is suggesting that it's actually detrimental to students' perceptions of safety. But again, it is mixed, and obviously common sense does say, well, it can be helpful if you have an outside person from the community coming in to have only one entrance and and a police officer. So just to say, I think what we can say in the end is that these security measures are inadequate. Okay, so they're helpful. They might be helpful, but they're really inadequate. Also just this really interesting fact. So a lot of this is research with schools such as Sandy Hook, okay, who have experienced a mass shooting at their school. And they stated they had all of these security measures in there, metal detectors, et cetera, and they felt that there was nothing more they could have done to improve physical safety in their school. But it still happened, and that the one thing that they recommended strongly was to improve the relationships between students and adults and between students so that they could feel more comfortable supporting each other and reporting potential acts of danger. And so I think that then this is a nice segue to the other part, right? Security measures is helpful but inadequate. The other section is prevention. So we need to really focus on prevention, and there's tons of solid science supporting the important components of prevention. Let's do these things. And so, and Nevada's doing some of these things, and so it's great to see and hear, but we really need to focus on preventative actions, and this includes Obviously, a lot of the multi-tiered systems of support that we're talking about, okay? But just some quick facts about the school system. School system is really afflicted with a number of potential, this high prevalence, sad issues, okay? Increased suicidality, youth over 10 years old. 1 in 5 youth are experiencing mental health difficulties. 72% of youth are traumatized already when they're going to school. But of the kids who receive services, 70 to 80% of them receive them in schools. Isn't that great? So schools are a great venue to provide service delivery for mental health services. The students need it. The students are there. And so this is why then one of the big issues is for us to really support the increased ratio, decreasing the ratios, really, okay, for all mental health professionals, school counselors, school psychologists, social workers, nurses, and everybody, because they're the ones who can treat these students, but also they're the ones who really know MTSS well, in addition to special education, right? And so multi-tiered systems of support, this tiered system of Tier 1 universal interventions, and Tier 2 for those who are not responding, and then Tier 3, and so on. And so just in this area then, we need to really focus on that. And so one of the quick things regarding that would be, so MTSS, I would kind of consider that school climate and school culture, which is a critical part of school safety overall. And the number of things that need to occur in there are cultural competence training, implicit bias, student voice, PBIS, trauma-informed schools. Those are all things that my colleague, Dr. Leverett, is an expert in. Social emotional learning, restorative justice. That's what I do. But also, there's really great frameworks for integration of all of these, right? So we all know the silo effect, and schools are overburdened with these new ideas. There's people in Oregon and also here at UNLV, it's actually me, okay, looking at integrating these things and how do we make things work that are realistic and feasible for sustainability over time. And then finally, a separate part, this is part of school climate, but a separate piece that really needs to be explicitly stated is the zero tolerance policies, which manifests itself in exclusionary discipline practices, right? There's so much research that this is ineffective. There's so much research showing that this produces disproportionate rates for students of color, typically African American students and Latinx students. And why is that? Well, because it's a cultural disconnect. When you have a school who is really a microcosm of the larger society, and school personnel are largely white, and from a European American cultural perspective, you have children who are from a more diverse cultural system, then there's going to be conflict. And so it starts there. There's a lot of things that need to occur, like I've already mentioned, but we really need to stop doing this. And fortunately, in preschool in Nevada, they don't do this, but in elementary, we need to stop that. I think that there's these, especially with it occurs most in these subjective adult decisions about discipline, right? So the adults are making decisions saying, oh, well, your behavior is inappropriate in my mind and offensive to me, or disruptive or rude, and so therefore I'm going to give you an office referral, which then leads to other punitive discipline practices. Some of my work, working with restorative justice, which is one intervention, just one to kind of address this issue, but also largely for school climate in general. The school is 98% diverse, and a lot of teachers who are diverse, but there's one teacher who moved from a rural area who's unfamiliar with working with diverse children, who's had 20 years of teaching experience. As soon as this teacher moves to the school, these punitive discipline rates go really high in this person's class. And from an experimental perspective, we don't really know, but it's pretty, there's telling, at least to me, there's a lot of these types of stories out there, right, in practice, where the judgment of good-intentioned teachers who are overburdened, who are under-resourced and underpaid, and not being provided helpful or enough professional development. So I think professional development is really important as well. So yeah, so those are my key points. Sorry.
No, don't apologize.
Most of the questions were for them, so
all
this is my
important
opportunity.
stuff. No, I got you. So another question that came on, we have just a few minutes left, unfortunately. I wish we had another hour here, but, and this is perhaps the most challenging question, but it's a good one. Could the panel comment on the larger idea of what is school for? How we currently define the purpose of school in our society with the challenge of advancing creative thinkers?
Such an easy question to answer, I think. Who wants to go first? I'll go first. Okay. Shouldn't have said anything. So I think I'm going to talk about from the early childhood perspective. I think that we look at schooling as really a really multifaceted whole child approach, that school during those first 5 years before they go to kindergarten is really about supporting the child's development across all domains. So motor development and physical development, as well as cognitive development, thinking, good problem solving, those types of things, communication, social and emotional. And our job in early childhood is really to nurture all of those areas equally so that the child is really ready to go to school when they are ready to go to kindergarten. And they're ready to not only do the academic work that's required of them, but also the social emotional pieces. I don't know if anyone's ever been in a kindergarten class. The hardest thing for children to do is realizing what am I feeling, how am I feeling, and what do I do with my feelings? Am I feeling anxious? Do I need to ask somebody for help for something? Do I really need to go to the bathroom? And how do I do that? Where do I go? Or someone tell me. So being able to ask questions to people is really, really important, and be able to figure out how to be with other people in different spaces is really important. And so that's for the child. And the other piece in early childhood that's really vital is to help support families understand not just their child's learning, but the system that they're going into. And in special education, we have big shifts in services between the age, when they turn 36 months into 3 to 5, and then all children when they go to kindergarten is a big transition as well. So preparing families to understand the education system is really important, and to understand what's happening. And again, when do you need to advocate for a child, and who do I go for help? When I have questions, how do I approach a teacher or an administrator or a specialist to figure out what I need? And so in early childhood, we're really doing that 2 generation of getting children ready to learn holistically. And I think it's really important for people to learn to be with and interact with other people and to solve problems, because if they can do that, then they can learn all the other pieces that are necessary in academia.
Sorry, you're speaking of kindergarten or 45-year-olds?
Well, as I tell my students,
it applies
executive
to both,
functioning.
as we all know.
I think those skills are important throughout your whole life. I mean, obviously, we're all here, and we work in an environment where you have to. Well, you don't have to, but it really helps if you work with other people, right? It helps if you talk to other people, and it helps your brain functioning and your heart functioning, so that you can do good work, and you want to stay in your job, just like any other retention that's needed.
Anyone else care to take that on?
I would just add that I think school, no matter what age, is really about being able to engage and thrive in a diverse community. It's having a safe space where you can test out things to figure out who you are and become civically engaged at some point and a thriving adult. So,
and piggyback off of that, research shows that employers want people who are good at playing with others, right? So they will hire people who have good skills and great social skills over someone who's a genius with low social skills. Mm-hmm. So schools have to get in the game of looking at what that means for our education, I think.
Excellent. So really wanted to get to this question. I think it has to be our last one, but from what you are aware of, are there specific bills, programs, policies that, this was a question from our audience, that we as teachers can advocate for or push? Absolutely love that question, so thank you for.
I just want me to talk again? I don't I don't know. I do know that there's some bills that are probably coming up to just increase to support childcare, which are really important. Childcare licensing, which sounds not very exciting, but childcare licensing actually helps support the actual interactions that are happening in the classrooms or in family homes where children also receive care. So I know those are coming up, but I think it's important to remember the environment piece, because that's where we see a lot of policy come, and then the other components come as an addition to that.
And I think the legislature is probably still working on some of these, and we are, getting some idea of what is coming up. But I think for folks to really just stay involved and be on top of it and make their voices and opinions heard, I think we as teachers really need to have a voice.
And not a specific bill, something that I know I will be looking at carefully when the next session rolls around is implementation. That tends to get neglected, especially in anything related to human capital. And this is not unique to Nevada, but when we craft these solutions, we tend to look at the end goal without thinking of the steps necessary along the way to get there. So I'm really going to be looking at implementation support in all the bills that have to do with human capital reform, human capital support, anything having to do with teachers, education personnel, whether it's building a new system, whether it's reinforcing a system that's in place, really looking at what does it mean in terms of year by year, what supports are there, and how do we measure success along the way.
And I'm looking specifically at bills that help provide incentives to support workforce development, trying to get more providers in the field, whether they're teachers or ABA. There should also be some funding coming forward for the Autism Treatment Assistant Program, which is part of the state that we want to look for increase in funding. And that, of course, it's always about money, right? But those are things to keep your eye on. They've gone through some other training or some recertification of how we're licensing our BCBAs in the state, so that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So just keeping our eye on what's coming up.
And for me personally, the reason I appreciate that question so much is that I say a lot in politics in general, but specifically since the question was about the legislature, all of us are better served when we hear from those who are in classrooms and in schools. You get better policy that way, and that can be in the form of advocacy, certainly, but when we just listen to what is really happening. There are so many different components, researchers, administrators, teachers, special ed teachers, that we always need to hear from more, in my opinion. So I would say, I actually just got a question. Is there time for one more? I say there is, but very quick. Okay. Let's see here. So could I ask, and this was something that I looked into, I don't mean to end this on a down note, because I think there is a lot of opportunity in this. So I looked at a study, just was curious about this based on information that was in the workforce report. The National Society for Human Resource Management conducted a nationwide survey in 2017, and respondents reported, 89% of respondents, employees, were either somewhat to very satisfied with their current job. How does that compare to educators? To the best we know of their satisfaction with their current job.
Can I speak anecdotally about that?
Of course.
What I
Yes,
hear the
I'm sorry. I
teachers
didn't
in our
expect hard
yeah.
numbers. I'm sorry.
Thank you, because I can't quote them. What I hear our teachers in our program saying is they really enjoy working with the kiddos. That being a teacher and working with children is fantastic. It's the other stuff surrounding that, the noise of the job, whether it's too much paperwork or demands that they're just not familiar with, or feeling unsupported, or whatever those factors are that get in the way. So we know that people go into teaching, I believe, for the right reason, which is working with students. So if we could build off of that strength, I think that would really help us move forward.
And if I just may add, we have found, as far as retention in all of the research, that teachers leave teaching. They don't leave students.
And as I say, in my research with people providing services for infants and toddlers, most of them said, we love the job that we do every day. We love working with families. We love working with children. We love supporting, parents learning how to interact with their child and seeing child gains. What we don't love is the system that makes it so challenging to do that. And I think all states are looking at how do we make that system work a little bit better so that people feel like they love all the aspects of their job. So I think just looking at some of those comments, and I will say a call for researchers is to do some quality research to get that data so we can bring it to state leaders and say, these are the things that they love, these are the things that are challenging, how can we make those marry a little bit better?
And just to add a plug for the workforce report, which will be available early 2019, we talk a lot about some of the factors that lead to teacher attrition as well as teacher retention. One of those is around the quality of teacher prep programs, and INCHE actually collects data on it. And what's really promising is that 60 to 73% of students that come from high-quality teacher prep programs in the state are retained at 5 years or more. So we're doing a good job in Nevada, but there is some data in that report in terms of the available satisfaction research, if that's a proxy for retention.
Excellent, thank you. So apologies to our audience members if we did not get to your question. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time, but if we could, just a hand for our wonderful panel for taking the time today. Thank you. Thank you very much.